All right, everybody. Well, welcome to this brown bag session on the LCAP. Today, we have Ms. Lilly Rosenberg from Kern County Superintendent of Schools, who's going to talk to us about the LCAP. I know some of you might be familiar with it, and some of it might be the first time that you hear this term. So she is going to expand on how we can get involved in the funding process for our schools, how we can ensure that our parents are part of this process. And I'm going to read a little bit of her bio just so you get to know Lilly a little bit. So again, Lilly is a management analyst for the Kern County Superintendent of Schools. She is a passionate advocate for education with over 20 years of experience. She has all kinds of experience, anything from teaching. She's been an academic coach, an intervention specialist, gifted and talented program coordinator, a Title III region lead for Region 8, and her current role as management analyst of continuous improvement support for the Kern County Superintendent of Schools. So as you know, as you can see, she has vast experience in the education space, and today she'll be helping us understand why the LCAP is important, what it is, and how we can get our parents and families involved. So thank you, Lilly, for coming, and I will pass the mic over to you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Lucero, for that introduction. Welcome, everybody. I'm so excited to be here with you today and share some information, again, like Lucero said, about the LCAP. I'll be giving you some background information as well about the local control funding formula, which really is what brought about the development of LCAPs. Here in Kern County, what I do as a management analyst is we support districts, local districts, in the development of their LCAP, along with the approval of their LCAP. So one thing we are really pushing with our districts is to really increase that level of engagement among our families, right? Because families are really the ones that know students best and that really can help us improve outcomes for students. So if I can ask you real quick, if you just take one moment and in the chat, if you can please tell me what your role is, whether you're a parent or a staff member, and one thing you hope to learn during today's session. Let me give you just a moment to do that. I could spend hours and hours talking to you about LCAP, so I want to make sure what you want to know is really what I highlight during our time together.
Uno para mí, todo está suyo. Para mi Valeria.
Okay, while you're thinking, I don't see anything coming in yet. So while you're typing, awesome. I see a PK facilitator and senior manager, community leadership for Go Public. Thank you, Carmen, Sade. Hope to help gather information that can be shared with our parent leaders who attend meetings regarding the LCAP and who also sit on several committees. Awesome, thank you for that. So if you're still typing, please feel free. I'll make sure I kind of glance over if you are still working on that response. So here is what I hope to cover during our hour together today. I do want to give you a little bit of background about local control funding formula, or we call it LCFF. And that really will set the stage for why the LCAP became a new requirement for districts. Finally, we'll end with some opportunities for family and community engagement. And I can talk to you a little bit about how you can make sure that you're part of the planning process. And I'm hoping to leave some time at the end for Q&A. If you have some questions as we're going along, please feel free to put those in the chat, and I'll kind of try to glance over every now and then. This is a time for you. I want to make sure we use this time to your benefit. If there's questions that come up, please feel free to pop them in. So communication specialist Shay, what I hope to learn is how parents can reach out and increase participation. And then part of School Site Council at Southwest High School. Awesome, thank you so much. Alrighty, so let's get going. So let's start with the local control funding formula, which is really what brought about the development of LCAPs. And I kind of want to set the stage for this part of the session with a question I want you to consider. So I'm showing you two communities here. Community A is Beverly Hills Unified School District. We know we have lots of resources in a community such as Beverly Hills. Then we have community B, which is Los Angeles Unified School District. The question I want to pose to you is, which district do you think receives more funding for their schools? Community A or community B? You can just type A or B into the chat. And if you're joining us a little bit, if you just came in, please share your name, title, and what you're hoping to learn today. And so Blanca says B, Sagario says B, Shay says A. Yeah, usually we have mixed responses for this question. So I'm glad that we have mixed responses. So let me tell you, before LCFF and after LCFF, what this funding for these different communities might have looked like. So before LCFF, all schools were funded equally, regardless of what their need was, right? So I'm showing you here some icons. So the yellow icons are for just our regular students, mainstream students. The red icon are for students who need additional supports. Those students are our low-income students, English learners, and foster youth. Notice Beverly Hills Unified has very few high-need students. Yet you can see from the green dollar signs, they were receiving the same amount of funding as a district such as LA Unified. Notice the amount of high-need students residing in LA Unified. We know that it costs more money, right, for resources to support those high-need students. So before LCFF, it really was not equitable. Folks were receiving equal amount of funds regardless of the need of the students they were serving. Very different now. After LCFF, this is what funding looks like. Funding now goes to where it is needed the most. Because districts such as Beverly Hills has very few high-need students, they receive the same base funding. Let's call these green dollar signs base funding. Notice both districts still receive that equal amount of base funding. But on top of that, now districts that have, depending on the percentage of high need students that they serve, they get additional funding. We call that supplemental and concentration funding. So notice now LA Unified receives a lot more funding because they serve a higher population of high need students. This is where you as educational partners come in, because our districts must ask educational partners, what should we do with this extra funding, right? Because otherwise, although educators, yes, we're experts in education, we don't know everything. We don't know all of the needs our students have, and that's where we need you. So remember that term, supplemental and concentration funding. We want those additional funds to go to these students that are displayed here in red that are our high need students. Those high need student groups, again, are English learners, low income, and foster youth. So let's talk a little bit about that. Remember, before LCFF, it was equal. Everybody received the same, kind of like this image here. But notice that some of the students can't quite achieve their goal. They can't reach their goal, right? Only this one student is able to reach that fruit on the tree, but the other two are not. Equity is really about providing additional supports. So maybe it's more instructional time, maybe it's more supplemental instructional materials to help the kids that need it, right? So it doesn't mean we're taking anything away from the students who don't need that extra supports, but we want to make sure all students are able to achieve their goals. So that's what we call additional, right? We can increase services to those students. But another way we can use that extra funding is to improve services. And that looks a little different. I want to spend some time on this image here with the bicycles. And I want to ask you, what do you notice about this image? How might you compare the top row of this image to the bottom row? I want to give you a little time to just kind of look at that and think. And let me just give you some think time. Welcome, Cynthia, Associate Director of Modesto. You want to learn more about how funds are distributed. Good, so hopefully you were here for the little chat here about LCFF. Welcome, Sonia. All right, so this image is very different with the bicycles. Anybody willing to unmute yourself and just kind of share, what are you noticing? Let's talk about the top row first. The bicycles meet the need of each cyclist. Thank you, Sagrario, I'm trying to use my Spanish, yes?
Yes, Sagrario.
Sagrario, thank you. Yes, the bicycles meet the need of each cyclist. So sometimes students need something very different. It's not more of something, it's something different. Let's consider our English learners, for example. If we have a newcomer, an English learner who arrives in our country with limited knowledge of the English language, we need to give them a different curriculum that might be in their primary language, right? So that they can access instruction. That's something different. That's not giving them something more. When we try to give all students the same thing, there's some students that are not going to have access, right? So as you're thinking about giving input into the development of your district's LCAP, be thinking about what are some additional supports we might provide to students, or when might we need something completely different, right? Such as the example I used with a different curriculum. I'm gonna pause there for a minute. So remember, districts receive additional funds for their high needs students. We know some students need more, some students need something different. Let's throw some ideas in the chat. What are some ideas for how districts might increase or improve services for some of our students that have additional needs? There is no wrong answer. Let's just type some ideas in the chat. We know right now, because of the pandemic, it really had a different impact on English learners, right? Or maybe students who are low income didn't have access to tutoring services or things like that. Yes, thank you, Lucero. They might need some expanded learning opportunities, right, to help them catch up. That would be an additional learning time, additional tutoring, maybe after school or before school. What else? Transportation, absolutely. Transportation issue support for those out in the country, yeah, in our rural schools, absolutely. So one thing that we see, sometimes districts offer after school programs, but if students don't have transportation to get home later, then they can't access those after school programs. So as a parent, I need to let my district know, hey, we need help with transportation as well. Districts have those additional funds to help meet the needs of those students. So those are some great ideas. More engagement and support for families. Yes, our families need to know, how can I help my students at home, especially since they've gotten a little bit farther behind because of COVID. Tutoring, yes, social emotional learning is really coming, it's really being highlighted given our recent situation with COVID and students being isolated for longer than they're used to. These are all wonderful ideas. Access to technology or internet, absolutely. So oftentimes when educational partners are invited to these LCAP meetings, They want to hear from you. And oftentimes parents are shy. Don't be shy, right? Let them know what you need. They want to know. They want to hear from you. Extra funding to teachers for specialized tutoring. Absolutely. For students who might be our students with special needs or English learners, diverse communication modes in the home language. Absolutely. We need to have access to translators and interpreters for our families who need that. So thank you. Those are all great ideas. So let's keep going here. So now that we've kind of set the stage and you know why, you know a little bit about the local control funding formula, and districts now receive additional money, right, for those high need students. Well, along with that additional money, districts are required to develop an LCAP, a local control and accountability plan. Before I tell you a little bit more about the LCAP, I want to know your current knowledge of the LCAP. And you're going to tell me on a scale from 1 to 4. So in the chat, you're going to put a 1. If you, LCAP, what LCAP? This is the first time I'm hearing this word LCAP. Put a 1. If you've heard about the LCAP, but you're not sure what it is, put a 2. A 3, you're familiar with the LCAP process and you know a little bit about the content of your district's LCAP. And then 4, you've helped develop the LCAP for your district. Apoyo para los padres que tienen, let me go back here. Apoyo para los padres que tenemos el entusiasmo para seguir la escuela. Absolutely, so some support for parents that want to continue education. Absolutely, por favor, compartan eso con las escuelas. Ellos quieren saber y quieren ayudar a los padres. So I see 4, 3, 2. So I see a little bit everywhere. So the term LCAP isn't new to everybody. You've all heard about LCAP. Perfect. Let me see a couple of 2s. Okay, perfect. So here's how the LCAP relates to LCFF. In order for districts to get that pot of money to get their budget released, they must have an approvable LCAP. The county office approves LCAPs. So we must have an LCAP that meets all of the requirements. One of those requirements is engaging your educational partners. And districts have a whole list of educational partners who they need to consult with and get input on the actions in their LCAP. And one of those groups are parents and families. It's also district administrators, teachers, community members. So that is one of the requirements. If districts don't have an approved LCAP, then their budget is not released to them. So you can see that this is a very important document for districts. So the LCAP is a 3-year plan. And this year, districts have started their first cycle, the first year of that 3-year LCAP. And in this LCAP, they're going to set goals, right? Districts usually have about 3 goals in their LCAP, and then they have some actions. This is how we plan to achieve these goals. In the LCAP, the goals and the actions all revolve around 8 priority areas. In the past, districts used to be evaluated only based on test scores. We know there's a lot more to student success than just test scores. So now districts have to include actions that address 8 priority areas. I'm going to share those 8 priority areas with you. And I'm also going to share some questions that as an educational partner, you can ask your district regarding each one of these 8 priority areas. So here are the 8 priority areas. You can see it starts with basic necessities, implementation of the standards, access to courses, student achievement, other student outcomes, parental involvement, student engagement, and school climate. So these are all these 8 really compile what makes the quality of an educational program. And districts are measured on each one of these priority areas through the California School Dashboard. I'm going to give you a little sneak peek into the dashboard. Hopefully you're a little bit familiar with that. So let me check the chat here real quick. did the state add 2 additional priorities? There's 2 additional ones that are just for county offices of education, priority 9 and 10. So I usually don't share them here. So yes, they're 10, but they're only for county offices of education, which are alternative education programs. So priority 1 is these basic necessities or basic needs. And this priority addresses fully credentialed and appropriately assigned teachers, your instructional materials, and safe school facilities. Districts will have actions addressing each one of these priorities, remember. So here's some questions that you can ask about basic necessities. One very important question is instruction provided by highly qualified teachers in all subject areas? Because what you might find is maybe all of your highly qualified teachers are at certain schools, and we want to make sure they're at the schools with the most need. So maybe highlighting that, right? And asking some questions if instruction is provided by highly qualified teachers in all subject areas. Are teachers receiving ongoing professional development, right? So that they can retain these highly qualified teachers and recruit new teachers to the district. It's important to build teachers' capacity to be able to implement the standards in an effective way. Asking about the textbooks that students have access to. And somebody mentioned technology earlier. Asking about access to a quality computer, right? Students need to have fluency in technology. We know that going into the 21st century, and even to access the state assessments that are given through technology. Are all of the school facilities, including libraries, fitness equipment, and playground, are they in working order? And in what ways might we improve facilities and equipment to benefit the physical, emotional health and safety of students? These are just some questions that you can consider asking when you're asked to provide input into the development of your LCAP. Priority 2 is about the implementation of state standards. And when we talk about state standards, we're talking about the Common Core state standards for English language arts and for math, your next generation science standards, and then your English language development standards. Here are some questions to consider to ask about the implementation of state standards. Asking about the plan for continuing professional development on state standards. The current state standards were released in 2012. So they've been around for, we're on 10 years. But if teachers don't feel equipped to implement them effectively, we're not going to see the student outcomes that we desire. Is there specialized professional development? Somebody mentioned this earlier. Specialized professional development on the standards for teachers of English language learners, of students with special needs, and other special student populations. Excuse me. And somebody also mentioned support for parents. Are parents being helped to understand what the grade level standards of their child or children are about, and how can they support their students in and out of the classroom? I have a granddaughter who's in 5th grade, and I know for me, like her standards are new from when I was in the classroom, right? So how are families being supported to understand what students are being required to learn so that we can support them at home? These are some questions you can ask so that you can make sure your district has a plan to provide those necessary supports, and those plans are in their LCAP. Priority 3 is about access to a broad course of study. And this really just ensures a broad course of study is available in all the required subject areas, including history, social science, science, English language arts and math, and physical education. Here's some questions you can ask. What classes are currently being offered to students? How well are students across all student groups doing in these classes? Right? Sometimes when we look at how students are doing overall, it looks pretty good. But when we dig deeper into student groups, it looks a little bit different. And I'm going to show you that on the California School Dashboard. So asking, how are certain student groups doing in these subject areas? And do students know what classes they need to meet their career goal or to enter college, right? If students don't know what their classes are, they're not having access to these courses. Do students receive multilingual support when they need it? How about advanced placement classes? Are those offered, and who are those being offered to? And then again, what opportunities are there for parents to discuss what their child is learning and how they can best support them at home? Priority 4 is about student achievement. This is really the priority that used to be highlighted. It was only about priority 4, and this is about test scores on their standardized state tests. It's about English proficiency for our English learners, and it's about college and career readiness for our high school students. Here's some questions that can be asked about student achievement. How do student test scores compare to other schools and districts in the area, right? How are our students doing compared to other districts? What has been tried already to improve student outcomes? What kinds of things has the district already done to help improve outcomes? How many English learners are moving towards full fluency in English? And what's being done to improve this? So finding out what the district has already done can help give you some ideas of what you might suggest that districts haven't tried yet or districts haven't thought of yet. Again, you'll notice that last one is always there. What opportunities are there for parents, right, to learn about how their children are doing in class? Let me pause there for a moment before I go over the last 3 priorities and pause for any questions. I know I'm sharing a lot of information with you. I want to give you a chance to unmute yourself. And if you want to ask a question for clarification or drop an idea in the chat, let me give you a moment to do that. Okay, I don't see anything in the chat, so let me go over the last 3 priorities. Priority 5 is about student engagement. And this is really about having those engaging programs that make students want to come to school, right? And we measure attendance to find out how well we're doing in student engagement. Armanda Ruiz, this meeting is very interesting, but why is it not in Spanish? Oh, I'm sorry. I was not asked to give it in Spanish, but I think we can talk to Lucero and maybe arrange that in the future. Armanda, quizá en el futuro planeamos hacer otra presentación en español. Yo hablo español, pero mi español sí está bueno, nada más que no lo uso tanto para que esté más fluent. Lucero, do you want to add anything to that?
Yes, thank you. Sí, Armanda, en esta ocasión se va a presentar en inglés para todo el staff y los padres de PIQUE, pero sí hay la oportunidad de tener una presentación en español y hay el interés entre los padres, que vemos que sí, podemos organizar otra. Pero gracias.
Gracias, Armanda, and gracias, Lucero. Okay, so priority 5, again, it's about really having engaging programs that students want to come to school. Here's some questions you can ask. What's being done to ensure all students are interested and motivated to come to school? If all we're doing is schoolwork for the 7 hours students are at school, they're not very likely to be motivated to want to come to school, right? So what additional activities are we providing that are making students motivated to come to school? And what's being done to identify the barriers to students attending school regularly? So if students aren't coming to school, what is being done by the district to find out why they're not coming, right? We cannot meet students' needs if we don't know what those needs are. So how are we identifying those barriers? And then priority 6 is about parent involvement and family engagement. This priority is really about more than just coming to meetings at school. It's about serving on advisory councils so that you can be part of the decision-making process and really participating in your child's education. Here's some questions you might consider posing. How is the district promoting and growing parent involvement? How are parents informed about school-wide activities and events? Are there different modes of communication? I think somebody threw that in the chat earlier, different modes of communication to make sure we're reaching all of our families. How is progress towards LCAP goals being shared with parents, right? We don't want to share these, we don't want to share our progress just once a year when it's time to develop our next LCAP. We want to share our progress along the way. So asking, how is progress being shared with parents? Are there parent workshops and training offered in parents' home languages, kind of like Armanda just brought up, right? Making sure our districts are doing that. And is there a family engagement coordinator or maybe a parent center with multilingual services or even parent volunteers, right, that can reach out to families? These are all things that districts work on, but you asking questions about it is really going to highlight it as a need and make sure that it's included in a district's LCAP. Priority 7 is about school climate. And this is really about safety, making sure students feel connected to their schools, and really how we are addressing discipline. School climate measures suspensions and how students respond in school connectedness surveys. Here's some questions that you can ask. Does this district or school have a clear written procedure that they use to resolve problems or concerns? Is there a conflict resolution program? And does all staff know how to use it? Are teachers and staff trained in alternatives to school discipline? And how have the rates for suspension decreased? Are they decreasing, or we see them increasing? And what more can we do to help decrease suspension and expulsion rates? And do students have a welcoming place that they can go in order to be safe both before and after school? These are some questions that you can ask. Somebody put expanded learning in the chat earlier, and having somewhere to go before and after school would be part of that expanded learning program. Priority 8 is other student outcomes, and districts choose different things to measure for priority 8. It might be community service, it might be arts or music, it might even be leadership or civic engagement. So this one will vary across district. I didn't include this questions to consider, but you might ask, what additional opportunities are students provided? Do they have access to performing arts? Do they have access to community service projects? These are all great questions to ask. And if districts see that families are interested in these types of services, they can include those in their LCAP actions. Okay, so those are the 8 state priorities. The reason I shared them with you is that the LCAP revolves around those 8 state priorities. Districts will have actions in their LCAP for each one of those priorities, and they will also measure progress on each one of those state priorities. So I want to share with you how districts share progress. And I mentioned before the California School Dashboard. This is a public website that anybody can go to. So I want to talk to you a little bit about it. The California School Dashboard uses this gas gauge to show progress. So let me get my cursor down here. Okay, so kind of like your gas tank, right? When it's full, that's good. We want it to be full, right? So notice this one that's full is pointing to blue. The performance color of blue means that a district or school is exceeding standards. It's doing very well. Let's move one to the left. Green, it's still close to full. Green is very good. Green is the state's goal for every district and school is to achieve a performance color of green. So if your district or school is blue, they're exceeding the state's goal. Yellow, you can see it's in the middle. That's just okay, right? Yellow is not bad, it's not good. Orange is bad, right? Orange means, okay, that's our tank is getting empty and we don't want to be over an orange. If districts or schools have too many orange or red, they might be identified for support, where our county office would come in and provide more support to the district to help them improve, find out really why they're not achieving where they should be, and to help them develop a plan so that they can better meet the needs of their students. Red, we can see that means our students are far from meeting the goals we have for them. So this is how the dashboard measures how students are doing. Blue being the best, red being the worst. I'm going to show you a district's dashboard. Here's what you might see when you go to your district's dashboard. Notice here's chronic absenteeism. Remember, we measure attendance, and this district has yellow. Put in the chat, is yellow good or bad? Or you can put, I don't remember. I want to make sure you're still with me. Not good, not bad. Thank you, Lucero. Could be better. Yeah, yeah, good. I like that. All right. So this district has yellow for chronic absenteeism, has yellow for suspension rate. Whenever you see no performance color, it means there wasn't enough students, right? If it's less than 30 students, they're not going to get a performance color. English language arts is green. Put in the chat. Is green good or bad? Green's good. Remember this, okay? Yep, I see a lot of goods. Yeah, green is good. But remember, this district has English language arts green and math green, okay? So this dashboard is for all students combined. My English learners, my low income, my mainstream, all students combined. These other priorities, basic services, implementation of standards, parent and family engagement, these are not measured with a performance color. Instead, districts will put in a narrative. It's a little bit more complicated, so I'm not going to share that. I want to share these other indicators that have a performance color today. Okay, so I'm going to go to the next screen. Now, this is a student group report. This is the same district, and I still have all students right here, all students, yellow, yellow, green, green. Remember, that's what we just saw. But now I also have it by student group. English learners are orange, green, orange, yellow. It's not as good as it was for all students, is it? What student group, here's my student groups. What student group do you see a red? Put that in the chat. Yeah, students with disabilities, we see a red in chronic absenteeism. If I only look at this one, it looks pretty good. Yellow, yellow, green, and green. We have to dig deeper, right? And we have to look at our student groups, because now I see there's a student group here who is struggling with chronic absenteeism. So we need to investigate that, find out why, and try to develop some actions to help the student group. I also see a lot of orange, right? There wasn't any orange before when I looked at all students. It was just yellow and green. Drop some student groups in the chat who have some orange. Yeah, Sade, wow, I like this data collection to help us know what's happening. Absolutely. Homeless, English learners, yep. And English learners are one of those groups that we said we receive additional funding for English learners, low income, and foster youth. So we have some funds that we can address those needs. And multiracial, 2 or more races. And I see some foster youth, yep, homeless. Socioeconomically disadvantaged, that's the same as low income. So that extra funding that we get through LCFF can really help me provide additional increased or improved services to my English learners, to homeless, to my English learners, to my socioeconomically disadvantaged or low income, and to my foster youth, who I also see some orange for. So again, You shared with me some student groups that seem to have some needs because of our orange or red. Anything that you're wondering by looking at these colors and looking at this data? Is there anything that you're wondering? I wonder why. Drop any wonderings in the chat, or come off mute if you want to share anything that you're wondering by looking at this data.
I'm kind of curious, what's the correlation between the absentee and the suspension rate, and how they're categorizing that? Like, you have some green, but then some orange for like foster youth, and then there's like, so what is the correlation between them, and how is it classified as a suspension? Is it based on just a number?
Yeah, so these are not, these indicators are completely separate. Chronic absenteeism is completely separate from suspension rate. So we can see for English learners, they're not doing so great with chronic absenteeism, but they're doing very well with suspension rate, right? Meaning they don't have a lot of suspensions. So these are not correlated together at all, they're separate. What you might see sometimes is students who maybe right here, maybe students that have yellow. So if all students are yellow with chronic absenteeism, is that because we have a high suspension rate, right? Is the fact that they're not coming to school because they're being suspended, right? So that's part of our investigation. Whenever we see these colors, we can't just say, okay, I think I'm going to implement this action. We have to do some investigation first. And sometimes we call that root cause analysis. Try to find out what is the root cause? Why are we getting this data? And that would require asking some questions like you just posed right now, right? So I might want to pull up some students that have high suspension rate and see what their attendance is looking like. I hope that I kind of answered your question.
No, yeah, that does, definitely.
Okay. So student group data is very important. Like I said, this is a public website. You can go to the California School Dashboard and you can type in your district's name and you're going to see this report right here. But you want to dig deeper and you want to go to student group. If you're interested in learning more about the California School Dashboard, please ask your school or district, and that might give them an idea to say, oh, you know, our parents want to know more about that. Let's put together a training. More support for our Latino children who have the same support. Yeah, absolutely, because we know sometimes, oftentimes Latino children are exposed to a different language at home, right? Which is a good thing. We're seeing that our students who are bilingual oftentimes are outperforming our students who are monolingual. So that is a benefit, but they might need different types of support at school. And we want to make sure that they get that. So let me share this. We're nearing the end of our session. I want to share with you opportunities for family and community engagement during the LCAP development process. So here's what we share with our districts. Thank you so much, Lucero. She provided a link to the California School Dashboard there. So this is what we share with districts as far as how they should consider engaging their educational partners. We always suggest collecting that data first, right? The district needs to collect that data and then share that data with their educational partners, right? Review the data with educational partners, kind of like I did with you right now with that student group report, and ask for advice of how to address identified needs. So they should be asking families, community members, staff members, what are some ideas that you have that can help us improve the data that we have? And those ideas you gave me earlier, you should be providing those to your district. Sometimes district staff will say, well, our families, they didn't ask for anything. They didn't put in, so don't be shy, right? You need to ask because we are here to serve you and your students. So don't be shy in sharing some ideas. There is never a wrong answer. So after they get advice and input from educational partners, including families, they go and they develop the LCAP, right? If it's their second year of their LCAP, they might just make some revisions. They might make a few changes because of the input that they got. They might make some changes because maybe the actions that they've been implementing aren't working, so they're gonna make some shifts or changes to their actions. Other opportunities for engagement are these advisory committees, right? Parent advisory committees, English learner parent advisory committees. School sites also have school plans. Those plans also give the district some ideas for actions that can be included in the LCAP. There's also always opportunity for the public to submit written comments regarding any actions in the LCAP, and you can provide these to your district at any time, okay? So you should be asking, how are we doing in making progress to these goals? What actions has the district already tried? And maybe sharing some advice with the district for some ideas that you might have. Before the LCAP is approved, districts will have a public hearing. These usually happen in the month of June. And it'll be a final chance to solicit, to ask for recommendations and comments regarding the actions in their LCAP. So you can go to these board meetings. This is at a regular board meeting of your school district, and you can provide those comments or share those recommendations. Districts will take those into consideration. Districts have made changes kind of at the last minute after this public hearing based on comments from educational partners. So look for those meetings. They're always posted. Notices are always posted 72 hours before those meetings so that families have time to arrange to attend them. So these are all the different opportunities that you have as an educational partner to be part of the LCAP development process. Any questions about those? Let me pause for a moment. Any questions about these different opportunities?
Lily, I want to uplift a question that came up in the chat. Sagrario asked about gaps of data for math and for foster youth, in particular with the last slide that you shared. But if you could explain generally why we might see those gaps.
Thank you. So remember when I showed this one, when there was no color, it's because we have a limited number of students. Okay, so the magic number is 30, but for foster youth is 15. So for foster youth, if there's less than 15 students at the district level, they will not get a performance color. Okay, so it's really because there wasn't enough students. Okay, the district will still have the student level information that they can use to make decisions, but it won't be displayed on the public dashboard. You can see the same thing for Native Hawaiian or Pacific Islander and 2 or more races. That is a great question. Great question. Very observant, Sagrario. Thank you. So kind of in closing, let me just kind of wrap up what the whole premise of LCFF and LCAP is. It's really about equity. It's really about making sure every student receives what they need to be successful. The state has realized that districts that have a large population of high needs students need additional resources. So districts are receiving those resources. They're counting on you to help them decide what to do with those extra resources. Transparency. Transparency is about showing the data. The data is there for the public, the California School Dashboard. But you as an educational partner need to dig deeper to make sure you're looking at student group information. Transparency is also about the public hearing that I mentioned and all the opportunities that districts provide so that educational partners can give input and that they can also share how they're doing towards meeting the goals that are in their LCAP, right? Finally, it's about local control. The state is no longer telling districts, this is what you must do with this pot of money. They're trusting districts to make the right decisions for how to use their resources. Districts are working so hard to meet the needs of all of their students, but they're also counting on you to help them when students aren't achieving the desired outcomes. They're counting on you as educational partners to share what barriers still exist so that they can address those in their LCAP. So with that, we have about 10 minutes for any questions that you might have regarding LCAP, the dashboard, or local control funding formula. I want to try to answer any questions that you might have.
I have a question.
Yeah, is this Blanca?
Yes.
Hi, Blanca.
Hello. I'm from the Sweetwater Union High School District, border town, like next to Mexico. And so I find that parent engagement is really hard, and I'm not sure if it's the same in other districts, but I kind of feel that we have all of this in place. The problem is that the parents that should speak up and they could tell us exactly what their children need are not giving us this information. I mean, I've been part of DLAC and DPAC and for about 5 years, and they don't come to these meetings. And I feel that, and I don't know where this comes into place. I don't know if this goes under parent engagement, but I feel that there's no connection with that parent. Like, parents don't feel comfortable coming into the schools, or they feel dumb because they feel like, why are you asking this question? It's a dumb question. And I feel that our districts really don't hire employees that, that know how to speak to, predominantly in our area, Hispanic community. And so then, is that in the parent engagement? So that's my number one question. I have 3 different questions.
Can I answer that one before your next one? Because I might forget this one. Okay.
Yes.
That is such a great point, Blanca. And really what I have learned from lots of our districts, some that are having lots of success with parent engagement, is really about developing parents as leaders, right? So that they can go out and talk to their comadres, right? Talk to their friends who trust them and bring them in. Parents have to trust us as a school site and feel like they're welcome and their input is really valued. If districts don't have parent outreach staff that is from the community and don't already have those relationships and trust from the community, they're probably not going to be as effective. So what I have seen in one large district, for example, Bakersfield City School District here in Kern County, and you might look them up, they've invested a lot into their family and community engagement, and they really develop parents as leaders, and they invest a lot into their parents so that they can go out and recruit additional parents to start getting more involved in the engagement process. So Lucero put something, PK partners with Sweetwater District, so feel free to reach out if your school needs support with family engagement. Yes. The other thing, if you're a community partner that is able to give input into the LCAP, maybe advising, right? Sometimes we think of things, and depending on the district, they haven't thought of that it makes a difference hiring people from the community to be these parent engagement staff, right? Maybe they don't know that. So providing them with that advice or that input. So hopefully that answered part of that first question. Blanca, did that completely answer that first question?
It did. It did. And I understand that. And I've heard what you've said because I've heard it before. But I feel that not only hiring someone from the community, but hiring someone that has gone through the educational process, like someone that has children that were ELD, or kids that are going through they've already passed the ELD. So what's the next step? So what are your children should be taking? Which that's when PIQE comes in. But the problem is, parents are not coming to these meetings for PIQE. I mean, I still attend them, even though I know most of the information, but I always learn something, so I continue to attend them. But yeah. I mean, for one of the last meetings that we had for PIQE, I was one person. That was it. Yeah. In the meeting. It was so sad. Yeah. And I'm like, I feel that I love our community engagement person at our school, but she's not knowledgeable about everything that needs to be explained to parents. And I think that's where, you know, it comes, you have to have someone that knows about college, that knows about taking the classes, that has been through that. Their children have been through that.
Sure.
Because I think that's where that's why we don't get so many more parents coming in. And parents go to her, but there's certain things that she doesn't know because she hasn't been through the process.
Right. So in that case, again, I would encourage, you know, maybe sharing with that district, building up your parent leaders, parents who have had students go through the English learner program, right, and have been through that whole reclassification, bringing those parents in, building them up as leaders so that they can go out and outreach to other parents. I'll share another example of another local district. They really started their family center providing classes on what interested parents. They had tejiendo, right? The classes that they had Zumba, they had things that were not related to education, right? And parents were coming to these just to get parents kind of acclimated to feeling welcome in the school district and not feeling like, oh, I'm not going to know that. They're going to talk education. I'm not going to know what they're talking about, right? Having these fun classes kind of to get their feet wet, right? With coming to school. So somebody put in, please do not forget the translation in Spanish. It is very important. Yes, and I'm not sure if that is regarding today's meeting. I apologize, but yes, doing that whenever we have school events, making sure that we're also providing access to our families that speak languages besides English. Alrighty, so we have about 3 minutes left. Anybody else that had any other questions, or Blanca, if you had additional questions that you haven't had a chance to ask yet?
I'll wait for someone to ask the questions,
okay.
And if there's time, then I'll ask my other questions.
Thanks, Blanca. Any other questions, preguntas que tienen padres? All right, Blanca, it looks like nobody else has any other questions if you want to ask another question.
Okay, so then in part of this program, so it's hiring teachers that are adequate teachers that have, you know, the skills is very important. And I get that. And there's a huge difference between, like in our area, there's always the east to the west side where, you know, we see that the west side gets all of the teachers that are not good teachers get dumped on the west side, and because the parents on the west side don't complain, and then all of the parents from the east side, you know, they're going to do lawsuits. I get it. I understand the concept of, you know, hiring good teachers, but what about administrators? Like when we push, where does it fall for principals, adequate principals? Like where does that fall in that? Because we've had opportunities to have principals in our school that know our community, and they were asked not to apply for a certain position, and we were pushing for certain, you know, administrators to come into our school. So then where is that in this plan? Is that in this plan, or is it, should we look somewhere else for that? Do you understand what I'm kind of asking?
Yeah, I do, Blanca. Thank you. Thank you, Carmen, for that comment. And thanks for coming. No, so priority 1 is about teachers. It is not about administrators. But that doesn't mean that that's not something that you can give your district input on, right? But it's not something that you would find in the LCAP, nor do districts need to report on the percentage of, you know, administrators with any certain level of experience and where those administrators are located. I understand that it's important, but the LCAP is not where that would live. Your board meetings, probably your district board meetings, are places where you can go, you know, and voice your thoughts on that. Blanca.
No one else has a question? I have one more, but I can wait.
Yeah, I think for the sake of time, since we've hit 6 p.m., we can go ahead and close. But as you all can see, Lily has kindly left her email in the last slide. So feel free to reach out to her. I've also left my email in the chat. We will be sharing this recording if you want to see it again. But again, please feel free to reach out to us if there's anything else we can expand on. Blanca had some great questions about, how boards work. We can have a brown bag about that if that's something that interests you all. But let's keep in touch and let's keep learning more about the LCAP. And thank you so much, Lilly, for your time, for such an amazing and thorough conversation and presentation. And I hope that we can continue developing our partnership with you and with Kern County Superintendent of Schools.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. And thank you everybody for your participation. And I hope you have a great evening.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Bye. Take care.